and welcome. In this video, we are going to look at the second conditional. Generally, we use the second conditional to imagine present or future situations that, in reality, are impossible or unlikely. In this example, it is unlikely that I will have a lot of money. But I want to imagine that I do have lots of money, so I can travel around the world. Let's look at two more examples of the second conditional. If it snowed in the desert, I would go skiing. If he spoke French, he would watch French films and read French books. In both these sentences, the situations are imaginary or unlikely. It rarely snows in the desert, but I want to imagine that I can go skiing if it does. And he doesn't speak French, so he can't watch French films or read French books. There are two parts to a second conditional sentence. One part is the if clause, or the condition. After if, we use a past tense. The second part is the unlikely result. We use would, plus a verb. We separate the two parts with a comma. We can change the order of the clauses. This means we can say, I would travel around the world if I had a lot of money, and I would go skiing if it snowed in the desert, and he would watch French films and read French books if he spoke French. When we write these sentences in this order, we don't use a comma. Very often, when we use the verb be in the second conditional, we use were instead of was for I, he, she, and it. For example, if I were younger, I would be able to run further. If she were rich, she would buy a big house. If it were warmer, we would go to the beach. Look at these second conditional sentences. In each sentence, there is a mistake. Find the mistake and correct the sentence. Pause the video to give yourself time to write the correct sentences. Then, return to the video to check your answers. Welcome back. Let's have a look at the correct answers. In the first sentence, the verb after if should be in a past tense. In the second sentence, we can only use would in the result clause. And in the third sentence, we don't use a comma when we start with the result clause. We can use unless to mean if not. For example, I wouldn't start my own business unless I had a lot of money, means the same as, I wouldn't start my own business if I didn't have a lot of money. And we can use other modal verbs like may, might, and could, instead of would, to express how certain we are of the result. It is important to remember that when speaking, we often use contractions with would. For example, if I were younger, I'd be able to run further. If she were rich, she'd buy a big house. They'd go to the beach if the rain stopped. As well as using the second conditional to describe unlikely situations in the future, we can also use it in other situations. For example, when we want to give advice, a common expression is, if I were you. For example, if I were you, I'd study harder. And, I'd see a doctor if I were you. We can also use the second conditional to hypothesize or make predictions. For example, if they stopped talking, they'd get more done. We'd be able to beat them if we trained more. And, we often use the second conditional to make polite requests. For example, would you mind if I used your computer? Would it be okay if I opened the window? Look at these second conditional questions. How would you answer them? Pause the video to give yourself time to think about and write your answers. Return to the video when you are ready. Now, find someone to practice asking and answering the question.